Good evening, everybody. President-elect Trump is beginning to fill out his government. Trump this weekend tapped two great Americans to join his administration: Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus as his chief of staff and Breitbart News executive Steve Bannon as his chief strategist. Priebus telling Fox and Friends this morning he was honored to be given the opportunity to serve.
It's really running the operation so that the right people are getting in front of the president, giving the president the right advice at the right time, and then privately advising the president more than publicly. And so it's really an operations role, and it's an advisory role, and it's something that I'm honored that he asked me to do.
And Bannon, for his part, former Navy officer, Harvard and Georgetown graduate, Goldman Sachs investment banker. He's worked at Breitbart since its inception in 2007. He's credited with energizing the white working class support that helped propel Trump to the White House, but he has done far, far more than that. Other names being considered reportedly by Trump to join his government: Newt Gingrich as possible strategic advisor, Rudy Giuliani for a role in law enforcement, and Ben Carson possibly education. We'll see. And here to talk about Trump's expanding administration, former Reagan White House political director Ed Rollins, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, Michael Goodwin, and among our guests here tonight, former presidential candidate and media mogul Steve Forbes will be taking up what is happening in this country right now as the House of Representatives prepares to decide whether or not running unopposed. Paul Ryan will be back for another term as Speaker. And the professor, who was the first in the country to predict a Trump victory right here on this show back in February. Professor Helmut Norpoth is joining me. As I said to him this evening, I want you here for the victory lap that you certainly supremely deserve. A busy day in news. President Obama holding a news conference before embarking on his final foreign trip as president. President Obama did not directly address the leftist organized protests and riots that are taking place in our streets, but he did call for unity.
The people have spoken. Donald Trump will be the next president, the 45th president of the United States. Those who didn't vote for him have to recognize that that's how democracy works. When I won, there were a number of people who didn't like me and didn't like what I stood for. I think that whenever you get an incoming president of the other side, particularly in a bitter election like this, it takes a while for people to reconcile themselves with that new reality.
That new reality, harsh for some little darlings, but it also reminds one of something someone, well, rather some years ago said: elections do have consequences, and here they come. It's all a far cry from the condemnation of the street demonstrations, protests, and violence that the president-elect's team had asked of Democratic leaders, including the president, to announce.
I think the President of the United States, Secretary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, perhaps others can come forward and ask for calm and ask for a peaceful transition and ask their supporters, which are masquerading as protesters now, many of them professional and paid, by the way, I'm sure, ask them to give this man a chance so that this country can flourish.
Flourish, that's what it's all about. And our top story tonight, the Associated Press tonight has declared Hillary Clinton to be the winner of New Hampshire's electoral votes just 6 days after the election. New Hampshire worth another 4 electoral college votes. That brings Clinton's total to 232. Donald Trump at 290. The popular vote, she maintains her lead, more than 670,000 votes. Michigan, of course, is the only state that still has not officially announced its results. The Michigan Secretary of State today said Trump is ahead by more than 13,000 votes. But the state's 83 counties have until November 22nd to certify their election results as they canvass the counties. As for the president-elect himself, he's feeling quite generous, with Hillary Clinton backing away from plans to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate her use of a private email server. Trump on 60 Minutes saying he hasn't yet made up his mind, but is more focused on important policy issues.
She did some bad things. I mean, she did some bad things.
A special prosecutor?
They're good people. I don't want to hurt them.
Donald Trump magnanimous in the wake of a devastating defeat for Secretary Clinton and Democrats all across the country. The Republicans hold nearly unprecedented control, not only in Washington, D.C., but also in state capitals all across the country. Republicans hold 33 governorships, tying a 94-year-old record. The GOP is also now in control of an all-time high 69 of 99 state legislative chambers. And despite the clear mandate, radical billionaire leftist George Soros, gathering in D.C. with liberal donors, big unions, MoveOn.org, and members of Congress, of course, House Leader Nancy Pelosi, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Congressional Progressive Caucus co-chair Keith Ellison, all scheduled to attend the three-day conference aimed at thwarting the Trump agenda over the course of the next 4 years. Soros making quite a name for himself, and it's going to be fascinating to watch the days ahead. Some breaking news tonight. There are reports Trump's team is seeking top-secret security clearances for his adult children and son-in-law, Jared Kushner. That, according to both CNN and CBS News, Mr. Trump's children, Ivanka, Eric, Donald Jr., as well as his son-in-law, Kushner, were named to the president-elect's transition team late last week. And joining me now, Great America PAC strategist, former Reagan White House political director, a veteran of 9 presidential campaigns, the dean himself, Ed Rollins, and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, Michael Goodwin, both Fox News contributors. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Let's start with the reported top-secret clearances for his children. Your thoughts?
I think they should have whatever they need. They're very close advisors to this president. He trusts them. Any president is entitled to bring in anybody he wants. They certainly aren't security risks. They certainly are smart young men and women. And my sense, if that's what he wants, he should get it.
You know, one of the things that's noticeable here, putting them on the transition team, I think Trump was very, very smart. I worry about the fact that they will not be in government themselves because they are more than his children. They're his trusted advisors and operators of businesses. What do you think?
Well, it's been a while since the White House was a family business, but that seems to be what's shaping up here. And as you say, this is who he's comfortable with. And I think that that is an important thing, particularly in the beginning, for a president to surround himself who makes him feel comfortable, whose advice he trusts, and whom he can be candid with on both directions. So I think whatever makes him feel comfortable is a way to begin.
Well, what makes him feel comfortable is Steve Bannon as his chief strategist, senior counselor to the president, and Reince Priebus as the chief of staff. What do you think of the appointments?
I think they're great appointments. I think Priebus is a very talented guy who understands the town well. He's not a part of the town. He was an outsider who came to the town and basically was the chairman of the party.
His reputation is being part of the Wisconsin Mafia, with Scott Walker, with Paul Ryan.
Remember, Wisconsin went for the first time since 1984 in the campaign I ran, and he played a critical role. Bannon basically came in and made that campaign function.
Not in 84 this time.
No, since 84.
Since 84. Bannon, one of the few people that remember that. Bannon, we're talking to people that matters. Bannon came in and made this campaign work. I mean, Kellyanne was a dear friend of mine. It was the face of the campaign and a great strategist, but he made it work. And again, a president gets to have around him the people he trusts. I think the combination is perfect. Having been in White House.
What do you think of the attacks on Bannon?
They're outrageous.
Because I know Bannon. He is smart. Right. He is a principled conservative, and he is a dynamo, intellectually and physically.
Look, I don't know Bannon, but I can just tell Lou from the way the press is handling this. This is very much like this is going after Trump. This is going after the election.
To hell with him.
But as though the election didn't happen. Yeah. Let's keep going after him.
To hell with them.
Well, look, I think we saw it today in the press conference, too. The question they did not ask President Obama was, Mr. President, you've just told us everything is great in the country. The candidate who was going to give you a third term just got shellacked. What happened? That question was never put to the president today.
Well, he kept trying to answer it, and he answered it in part by reliving his days, his glory days in Iowa, running against Hillary Clinton.
And John Edwards.
Yeah, well, Well, I think that at this point, that's John Booth.
He better get to his White House talking points quick, because about the 30th of January, most of his accomplishments will have been eliminated by executive order and by the congressional activity. And
what is your sense on the way he is going to people his cabinet going forward?
You know, I think listen, these guys are going to make smart choices. And I think at the end of the day, again, it's a comfort zone. I think Donald Trump is a CEO type guy, and I think he's going to have a close operating team around him, including his children. And I think to a certain extent, the cabinet basically will do what he basically directs them to do.
Yeah, I know. When you say CEO, I want to throw a qualifier in here. That creates in the minds of many the name George W. Bush, who was never a CEO in the true sense of the word. Right. We're talking about the only person to run this government who has been a CEO of a major corporation. We've had CEOs in defense. We've actually had that twice with both Cheney and Rumsfeld. Most recently, it goes back to General Motors as well in the 50s. But
as I've said repeatedly on the show, I'll quickly get off. The president has to be a decision maker. This president makes decisions this president.
Why am I not worried about that? Why am I not worried?
But that's what he does. That's the job of the president. This guy has made decisions every single day in the toughest environments of all. So I have great confidence he'll make the right decisions.
Paul Ryan, unopposed in elections tomorrow in the conference and in the House for the speakership. What does this say about the conference and the vibrancy of the House itself with 53 new members?
I think the relationship between Ryan and the new president is going to be one of the more interesting parlor games in Washington, because I think that Priebus is there, I think, primarily to be the buffer between them and to make sure that they're on the same page. I think it could blow up, or it could be a dream team. It will have to be seen.
Let me ask this one question as we wrap up here, real quickly. Based on past performance, what do you think the likelihood, the past performance of Paul Ryan in his treatment of Donald Trump?
Well, it hasn't been good to date, but I think it will be from here on out. I think at the end of the day...
I got a future projection out of a question about past performance.
Past performance is no guarantee of future results.
There you go. You got it.
You liked your answer better than my answer.
I think in this case you're likely to see quite a... How did you style it? It's going to be one of the more interesting.
As I have always said, if you're going to bet, always bet on the president. Don't bet on the speaker.
Yeah. Well, we're all full. I think we're all in on that bet. We're coming right back. Much more. Please stay with us. Critics are calling for a boycott of PepsiCo now that its CEO is basically working as a political operative of the Democratic Party. Indra Nooyi threw her support behind Hillary Clinton. But after Trump's win last week, she claimed her employees wanted assurance of their safety. Indra Nooyi, exercising, it appears, considerable hyperbole. She's not the only CEO, her stock today, by the way, down 2%. She's not the only CEO in some trouble for mixing politics and business. Grubhub CEO Matt Maloney had to backtrack after he suggested his employees who backed Donald Trump should resign. His stock down since he made the remarks, down 4%. And the security firm Packet Sled put its CEO, Matt Harrigan, on administrative leave after he threatened to take out President-elect Trump with a sniper rifle. Harrigan posted on Facebook, quote, "I'm going to kill the president-elect and bring it Secret Service," end quote. He went on, "Nope, getting a sniper rifle and perching myself where it counts, find a bedroom in the White House, expletive, I'll find you. And for this, it's administrative leave. Are you kidding me?" Unbelievable, unconscionable. Joining me now, former presidential candidate, Forbes media chairman and editor-in-chief, Steve Forbes. Steve, these CEOs acting like this, speaking thusly, this guy, Harrigan, is out of his mind, obviously.
Yeah.
But to be on administrative leave, are you kidding? When would a board not fire a CEO?
He needs counseling, Lou.
Yes, well, I'm sure he does, but he also needs to find a job. If I were sitting on that board, wouldn't you insist?
Well, with the Trump economy, he'll be able to find a new one.
Well, okay, let's pretend that was a serious question, because I am serious about it, because I find it absolutely unconscionable that corporate America is talking and sounding like that.
No, what this guy did in terms of calling for the assassination of a president is unconscionable, and the Secret Service should be on him. He should be fired. That thing is absolutely outrageous.
Now, what about Nooyi and her remarks that are just, I mean, come on. Are you kidding? She's talking to the New York Times. I get it. It's all the same playground. But this is just irresponsible on her part and her board to tolerate it.
Well, I think the norm after an election, as you know, is to say we got to unite. Trump's speech when he won the election on Tuesday night set the tone. Again on Thursday when he met with the president. The campaign is over. We got to close ranks. We're going to try to be president of all the people. What you want a candidate who's won the election to say, he did all of that. So give the guy the benefit of the doubt.
To the point. Why would the board tolerate that kind of conduct on the part of its CEO?
Probably because they agree with her.
No, I think that's probably right. And what should be the response of the public? They're calling for boycotts. Here we go.
Well, Coke tastes, is that things go better with Coke? Is that
you've got all of those you've got all those mottos. Are you a Coke or a Pepsi guy?
I have to confess Coca-Cola.
All right. With that, we'll consider the issue settled.
For medicinal purposes only. It's great for upset stomachs, and so just medicinal purposes.
Right,
just want to reassure you.
My guess is that a couple of brands you don't want to share with us about your true medicinal beverages.
Goes great with a Big Mac.
Absolutely. We got to get all these brands in now. Let's turn to basically the idea that Ryan is running unopposed tomorrow for Speaker. After betraying the nominee, doing so numerous times. And the national liberal media just has sort of created a cone of silence around it to watch. You could almost hear them, just licking their chops to watch this unfold.
Well, I think if President-elect Trump wanted to go after Ryan, he certainly would have indicated that on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Oh, that's not the issue. The issue is the conference. I mean, it's sitting there like a bunch of poodles,
No. I think in terms of getting Trump's agenda, starting with the tax bill and the repeal of Obamacare, I think they all know that if they don't get big things done in the first 100 days, all of them are going to pay a price. So keep the unity, get the big stuff done, because if they don't, both are going to suffer.
Steve Forbes, great to have you with us.
Good to be with you.
I'm going to be, was that Burger King you were going at? No, it was
Big Mac.
McDonald's.
Burger King's good, too. The cheese Whopper is great.
Wendy's?
Wendy's, yes, they've got great. Their chicken sandwich is superb.
I've known Steve Forbes a long, long time, and I have never seen him in such a fast food mood as tonight.
Well,
thanks for being with us.
Just to show where my heart is.
Wait a minute, he's not through, folks.
Home of the Whopper.
But he's not.
Dunkin' Donuts.
He's not.
McDonald's.
Steve Forbes, great to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Be sure to vote on our poll tonight. The question is, do you believe the never-Trumpers in Congress should be embarrassed by their opportunistic embrace of the president-elect? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs tonight. On Wall Street, another record-breaking day for stocks. The Dow up only 21 points, but a new all-time high. The S&P off a fraction. The Nasdaq down 19. Volume still heavy trading. 5.3 billion shares. This Trump rally goes on. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, what a difference a week makes. This was Speaker Ryan on election eve.
It is no one person's party. Donald Trump won the primary fair and square. As a party leader, as the highest elected official in the party, I have always felt a duty to the process, to democracy, to the primary voter that must be respected. And he won the thing fair and square. But no one person controls this party. This is a bottom-up organic grassroots party based upon conservative principles.
I'm going to keep my hand over my heart as the sound fades there. Now the Speaker urging his colleagues to join forces with the man he opposed at every turn. And he is the subject of my commentary here next. Much more straight ahead. Stay with us, please. Now a few thoughts on a curious direction taken in our national swamp. You know, the one the president-elect promised to drain, and a dangerous, dangerous course it seems to be. All is now set to hold House leadership elections tomorrow. Speaker Paul Ryan running unopposed for re-election. This is the same Ryan who was working more closely with President Obama than his own conference, who, dare I mention this, who betrayed his party's nominee for president. Ryan, after all, was on a losing, not winning Republican ticket just 4 years ago. And he was crushed in a debate that year by none other than Joe Biden. This is the same overfull Hamlet who took a month to endorse Trump after he became the presumptive nominee, who said he had a, quote, obligation to call out Trump. He slammed Trump, attacked his immigration proposals. Ryan criticized and deferred and never once advocated for Trump. It was 1 week ago, last Monday, that he said to a radio talk show host, quote, no one person controls this party, when he should have been speaking for the top of the ticket. And I think it's clear Ryan believed Trump would lose the election. Ryan kept waving his silly Better Way agenda pamphlet around. Not the Trump proposals, not the party's platform. Ryan reminds me of the story Trump told throughout his campaign. He quoted the poem about a woman taking in an ailing snake.
Now she stroked his pretty skin and then she kissed him, held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. Oh, shut up, silly woman. The reptile with a grin. You knew damn well I was a snake. You knew everything about me before you took me in.
And indeed we do. Ryan has made clear to all, to his fellow Republicans, to the nation, what he is, what he's capable of, and who he is, and there's no cure for that. I sure do hope I'm wrong about all this. I just don't have any evidence whatsoever that I am. The rest of it is up to Ryan. We'll see. Our quotation of the evening, this one from Malcolm X, who said, quote, to me, the thing that is worse than death is betrayal. You see, I could conceive death, but I could not conceive betrayal. There is a reason, after all, we call Washington a swamp. We're coming right back. Well, speaking of communists, China issuing a warning to the president-elect. President Xi Jinping declaring in a phone call to Mr. Trump that cooperation is the only choice for relations between the world's two largest economies. Mr. Trump said there was, quote, a clear sense of mutual respect between the two men. Alibaba's Jack Ma, however, was somewhat less symbolic in his expressions and less cordial to the president-elect. Ma last week warned that if Trump failed to work with China, disaster would follow, end quote. Mr. Trump also talked with Russian President Vladimir Putin today. Trump's office said the president-elect told Putin during the phone call that he's very much looking forward to having a strong and enduring relationship with Russia. Joining me now, former Pentagon official, member of Trump's National Security Advisory Committee, Fox News contributor, KT McFarland, chief economist for Moody's Capital Markets, John Lonsky. Great to have you both with us. These somewhat veiled warnings.
Not so veiled.
From Xi Jinping, at least.
Jinping, yeah.
Jack Ma representing Alibaba. He is a representative of the PRC, an ambassador, if you will, to the markets and to business. I mean, this is not bright of the Chinese, and they're normally very bright.
The Iranians did the same thing. The Iranian foreign minister did something very similar today, basically saying, you know, you've got to understand, Mr. Trump, that this is the world. You're going to have to deal with us the way we've been dealt with before. Here's what I think, that for the last 8 years, countries like China and Iran have had a pretty nice ride. They've gotten whatever they wanted, and we've had no consequence to any penalties or no
Just
penalties.
about everybody but America.
Everybody but America. And so they're just putting their shot across the bow, saying we expect this to continue. The interesting thing, that was the second thing you talked about, which is the Russian president's phone call. The Russians made no threats. They didn't have the shot across the bow. They talked about working well. So it's this interesting contrast between the two.
And this makes no sense, because China is much more dependent on U.S. consumers than Russia is. Yeah. It makes absolutely no sense. I mean, they really want to be kind to their best customer. They don't want to discourage U.S. consumers from buying Chinese goods.
I'm always amused by this thing about the idiocy of the bromide. You got to be careful with your banker. They're not. They're not our banker anymore. They've been unloading our stuff for a long time now. And the fact is, we have an immense investment in China that we can sacrifice and replace rather quickly. I know Apple doesn't like to hear this, but rather quickly.
Yeah, and they hold, let's say, less than 10% of all traded Treasury debt outstanding. It's not what it used to be. It's been sliding all that while. Up until recently, Treasury bond yields had been falling.
Well, and the real issue is in national security. When we decoupled human rights from national security interest 25 years ago, with China in particular, that was one of the dumbest things we could have possibly done, because there is a transfer of wealth, a transfer of a knowledge base to China from which we are still trying to recover.
Except that if the Donald Trump economic plan, when he talks about a pro-growth economy, pro-jobs economy, corporate tax cuts, bringing them trillions back to reinvest in the United States, the new industries that we have on the drawing boards that are just about to be produced. If the United States has an economic boom, which people like you have predicted with a Trump...
There are no people like me, Kate.
Well, there are no people like you, absolutely, because you were the first one that everybody else copies, Lou. But if Trump's economic plan succeeds, as you and others, you predicted first, then not only that, the United States is not only in the position of being the most powerful, but the most economically powerful and dominant country again.
And to follow up on what KT's saying, and thank you for the kind words, but to follow up on the issue here, we're talking about an economy that is struggling with 2% less growth. We have an opportunity, if we get our trade in balance, to bring, just on that level of economic activity, it'll rise to about 3%. If we balance our trade accounts and capital accounts, right?
Well, more than in all likelihood. And of course, one of the reasons why you have a trade deficit is because perhaps you're not as competitive as you should be with the rest of the world. And it's also because perhaps we're not strictly enforcing these trade deals as written.
Hell, we can't even read them. I mean, they're coming in these 5,000-page packages. We've got Barack Obama, who never took an economics class, walking around saying his deal is a good deal. It's a disastrous deal.
It's the Affordable Care Act all over the place. Nobody could really understand it initially.
That's something we're going to miss under a Trump administration, I think. And that is, you know, the bills that people have to pass in order to know what's in them.
There is beauty in simplicity.
There is. You know, and you know what? Donald Trump has been emphatically straightforward and succinct in his proposals, his statements. And I'm listening to Barack Obama today, to just wander a little off course here, folks. I'm thinking, how does the man keep talking? He is so dour. He's so... Can we accelerate Donald Trump into the White House?
Why do you think Donald Trump just won the most extraordinary landslide victory in American history? He is now going to be the first president since George Washington to walk in, and he owes nobody. He doesn't know the donor class, doesn't know anybody.
And he's the smartest son of a gun in a long time.
Yep.
John Lonsky, how's the economy? We're going to see the Trump rally continue?
Well, you know, this is destroying my forecast that I had before the election. I saw 2% growth, and I was out there protesting.
You've got to watch the political
I had a red flag. I was upset that Trump won, and I look like a fool now. I want to get my job. I'm looking at 3 to 4% growth. What happened to my 2% growth? What happened to my 1.5% 10-year Treasury yield?
That's what we call a high-class problem. And Lonsky does not watch enough of the political savants and gurus in this broadcast to know you don't have to be right to continue to make a forecast. But we sure do appreciate his honesty. John Lonsky, KT McFarland, great to see you both. Thanks so much. Breaking news tonight, the head of the Los Angeles Police Department has just announced his police department will not enforce Trump immigration policies or enforce immigration law. Chief Charlie Beck says he has no plans to help the Trump administration port illegal immigrants. The announcement comes just hours after Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel said Chicago will remain a sanctuary city. A city, by the way, a sanctuary city, call it what you will, that is on track for a record number of shooting deaths in that city. It's an extraordinary leadership on the part of two left-wing led major cities, the second and third largest in the country. Joining me now, former Lieutenant Governor of New York Post columnist, senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research, Betsy McCoy. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Let's start with reaction to Chief Charlie Beck. I mean, this is outrageous.
And the public all across the country should be outraged because Donald Trump made the election, to some extent, a referendum on this very issue: illegal immigration, sanctuary cities, and the threat to our safety. The death of Kate Steinle, for example, murdered in San Francisco by an illegal immigrant.
Which Donald Trump brought to national attention.
That's right.
And used it as an absolute avatar for what is the outrage of the country's response, and particularly this president's response to illegal immigration.
That's right. And so President-elect Trump, I know, will do whatever he can to push back on this, whether it be denying federal funds to these cities that refuse to abide by the rule of law. I don't know, and we'll have to see what he can do with or without Congress. I'm not going to get ahead of the president-elect on this issue, but I can tell you that he will take it very seriously.
Yeah, and the Congress seems to have, it's going to be an I had a few words to say about one of my favorite swamp dwellers, and that is Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House. And the fact is, he's sending mixed messages here before the president even the president-elect takes office.
That's right. And it may be to his own peril. Let's see how he does on his
Well, he's never done
Speaker.
anything. He's never accomplished anything, and he's managed to make it through, what, we're approaching 18 years in the House without any achievement.
Well, the people have sent a message that the old Republican establishment, which failed to listen to them on economic issues, on immigration, on terrorism, has to change.
Yeah, it has to. And one of the first changes the president-elect has promised will be the repeal and replacement, and those will be contemporaneous, simultaneous, he says, of Obamacare.
That's right.
And we're looking at premiums for people, as he has pointed out over the course of the campaign, that the system, the Obamacare healthcare program is imploding. It's everything the Republican Party warned about in 2009 is taking place.
And you hear the left cry, well, 20 million more people are covered, but 10 times that many people, Lou, are suffering because of Obamacare. 155 million people who have seen their deductibles and their on-the-job coverage up 49%. People who have seen their hours on the job pushed down below 30. Other people can't get a job. The New York Fed just came out with a report that 17% of service companies and 23% of manufacturers in that state have put a lid on hiring because of the employer mandate.
And this is tearing up small business and keeping insurance for 26 and under, keeping them on children under those, young adults under that age, still on their parents' policies and pre-existing conditions. He says he's
That's
going
right.
to pay. How much will it cost?
They will do in a much less expensive way. Let me explain. They're going to cover pre-existing conditions with risk pools. It will not drive up the premiums and deductibles the way Obamacare does by forcing healthy people to pay those high prices to cover the sick.
It's going to be fascinating, and I know you will, I hope you will, be with us here as we go through this in the weeks and months ahead.
I know it's going to be an enormous improvement. Lower premiums, lower deductibles, more flexibility to improve Medicaid.
And Betsy McCoy is going to explain it all as we go through it. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Betsy McCoy. Up next, the professor who predicted a Donald Trump victory right here on this broadcast in February. What does your model say who will win the general election this year?
Yeah, my model suggests that Donald Trump will win the general with a fairly high certainty, 97%. That's a little scary, but...
He later adjusted that down to 86 or 7%, but to me that was pretty impressive. In February, 97%, and it turned out he was 100% right. Professor Helmut Norpoth joins me here next. Stay with us. We're coming right back. In our online poll, we ask you, should the Justice Department immediately investigate George Soros and his links to nonprofits and their role in inciting riots and demonstrations that may have caused property damage and personal injury? 94% of you responded yes. Well, there you are. And my next guest, guess what? He was the first to predict and to be correct about Donald Trump's election right here on this broadcast back in February. I'm joined now by Helmut Norpoth, political science professor at Stony Brook University in New York. It's great to see you. And all these months later, a lot of people thought you were a little bit out there on the edge there with that prediction. And 97%, wow.
Well, at the very least, I mean, I thought I was an idiot or ludicrous or something like that or worse. No, it feels good. It feels good to be